Hello and welcome to the Amplifier Podcast, a show where the best in business discuss how you can grow your business best. I'm Wyatt McPherson, I produce this show, and on this episode, our host Don Cooper is joined by Todd Snelgrove for his final of 3 episodes with us to talk about value creation in all aspects of a successful business. Todd is a senior member of Experts in Value, driving value-focused selling and culture language to help businesses create and maintain high value creation for their clients. Todd is also a director and editor of the book Value First, Then Price, Qualifying Value in Business-to-Business Markets from the perspective of both buyers and sellers. Todd is on 2 more episodes of the podcast out at the same time as this one, so make sure you check those out and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss any in the future. But with all that said, I truly do hope that you enjoy this episode of the Amplifier Podcast.
So many companies have so much, we all have so much emotional connection to how valuable we think we are and how different we think we are, that we don't actually take the time to clearly define our differences and then quantify the value. We say things like, we've got great people, and we've got great training, we've got great engineering, we've got great productivity, and we've got great material, and we've got great safety. And what I tell people is, do you think your competitor says that their people suck and their productivity is garbage and they have a terrible safety record? I've never heard a company on the planet say, hire us, we suck.
Yep. And one way, it's an exercise I do, is whenever you say a benefit statement, more reliable, more training, closer to the customer, whatever that is, keep asking yourself the question, so what?
Yeah, exactly.
And this is why I think people ask me how, I hate to say, was successful at SKF. I said, as I wasn't an engineer. I didn't take anything for granted. I asked, and thank you all my colleagues over the years for looking at me going, seriously, you're asking that question? But if I kept asking the question, so what? Eventually I get to a number. Real quickly, true story. It's funny. So SKF turns 100 years old in whatever year, 2007. They spent zillions of dollars designing a bearing that uses less energy, less friction. Okay, we're in Sweden, executive management meeting, and I'd say they start off with this new thing. I'm not here to do a sales pitch, but it's going to use less energy, etc. And they spent most of the presentation on the how. And of course, the people want to know. I mean, this isn't a marketing thing, Todd. We want to know, how is this technically feasible? And then they get to the fun part for me, the benefit statement. So it lead to the benefit. They should have started with it, and they go, and it's going to run cooler. And you hear everybody, and my buddy beside me, remember, I've been in the business now 20 years already. Why does it matter what the temperature of a bearing is? Because I've been in paper mills, steel mills. They're big outdoor facilities. I mean, again, I don't even know what the temperature it runs at now, but if it's 1 degree, who cares? Like, you have to put an air conditioner on.
When you walk through a paper mill, it's hot and steamy.
To begin with. So I'm like, what, you got to turn the air conditioning on to turn the thing down? And he looks at me and he goes, you're an idiot. And I go, okay, point taken, but why? Everybody in the world knows, Todd, there's a direct correlation between the bearing operating temperature and the lubricant life. And I'm going to make up numbers, but for every degree or whatever degrees of temperature change, it reduces the lubricant life by 50%. I'm like, so less temperature, lubricant life lasts longer. Yeah. Well, if lubricant life lasts longer, that means you're going to use less lubricant. Yeah. Which means you're going to dispose of less lubricant. Yeah. Which means, well, why didn't you say that? Yeah. You made me make the assumption that I knew what cooler was. And so how many people that are engineers, and again, probably all the engineers are laughing, but of course we knew that. The procurement person didn't.
Yeah, of course not.
I wouldn't know that. Now you say, look, you're going to spend this much more. How much money do you spend on industrial lubricants? X. What percentage of that goes into bearings? We don't know. Let's say it's 10%. Okay, fine. Seems reasonable. Okay, boom. What do you pay for it? Let's use a range. Okay, then we've got the labor and the amount. I mean, it turned out the value proposition of lubricant savings was the biggest value driver, not the energy, because the energy of the bearing was so small. The point being, by asking the dumb questions, grab your buddies, Take them out for a beer and give them a value proposition and see if they understand it. If somebody that's not from the industry can't understand the value proposition, it's probably not clear.
Yeah.
And it's another set of eyes. Sorry to go on there, but again, it's one of those things.
No, but I think that's so important because, for the customer who's buying the bearing, particularly the buyer, if one bearing is $1,000 and your bearing is $2,000, and the brochure or the talking head says, yeah, but our bearing is cooler.
Exactly.
Literally what the procurement guy is going to say is, so what?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yep, exactly.
Why should I care? You're not telling me why I should care, so I don't care. Right? So what? Well, cooler means longer life of the bearing. Cooler means less lubricant. Cooler means you're going to get twice as much out of the lubricant and the bearing and the lifespan of the entire system. And the value, the cost savings there is that, yes, you're going to spend $2,000 on a bearing, but you're going to save $6,000 on lubricant over the life of the bearing.
Yep. So there's an ROI of 500%.
Yeah. Now our $2,000 bearing created $5,000 in extra value, minus the $1,000 in extra cost, and now it's a $4,000 value proposition.
Yep. And that's hard value.
That's hard value, and that's not apples to apples. That's apples to bananas.
And that's where procurement says to me, the problem with you salespeople is you don't do that for me.
Yeah.
And they've got 50 variations, but you use these words, you don't put numbers to it, or they're so vague, I don't know, or when I push you on it, you say, oh, the brochure says so.
Yeah.
So, take the time and effort, and the way to do it is to follow the life of your product or service, see where the touch points are, where you can affect it, start asking yourself those questions, so what, then start putting some ranges of impact.
Right.
Okay. And they don't need to be perfect. They just need to be numbers to start, because what I'm doing as a person buying is I know what your price is. I know what your competitor's price is. Now, what I'm looking at is what is the expected value, worst case, best case. Now, if your value is this much and you're asking me to pay this much, that's a risk reward.
Yeah.
But if it's worst case, best case, this case, and you've done it 900 times and it's way up here, what I really care about, and sorry for the language, Don, but it's to cover my ass. You're asking me to spend, 10% more, so that's 10 grand more. And I used to love.
For the buyer, certainly, depending on the buying organization, they might be getting measured on price savings. And so, in order to get them to be your champion for change, you better give them ammunition to cover their butts, to justify them hanging themselves out there saying, no, this is the better choice. Now, I've found those people over the years they were almost always veterans who knew the facility, knew the business, and they had a lot of confidence in, hey, we've done this 15 ways wrong before. This is the better decision. But most, all of the new, going from buyer to procurement to supply chain professionals, they don't know the business they're operating. They know supply chain practices, and they're not going to do the math on what I would call strategic byproducts of the value creation. Like they're buying two bearings, as you put it, but the real savings is in the lubricant.
That's where the big money is. And just, you said, there's a big assumption that people think that procurement's measured on price savings. And that's where you come back and say, are you measured on price savings or cost savings?
Right.
Well, the cost. Okay. Now, what they mean though is not, I did a free training program. No, they got to be hard cost savings, but I'm not going to say I've won every order, but I've never lost it as long as the cost savings have been hard.
Right.
I've signed agreements there saying, okay, we're really going to make this happen and the like. And I think the other point, when you walk the life of your product or service, you will find these unintended consequences or these opportunities are huge. So real quick story, paper company, my company, and of course, everybody wants to focus on the big dollars, the big machine, the big turnarounds, whatever it is, right? And I was at the head office, and I was with a colleague, and we were walking the facility. while my friends were in talking about some of the commercial delivery times and that type of stuff. And I didn't realize how many pumps existed in a paper mill.
Oh my
Again,
God. Yeah.
not an engineer.
Hundreds.
And I said to my very smart colleague who came from the industry, I said, I didn't know this. And he goes, oh yeah, yeah. And I said, any idea what life they get out of those pumps? And he smiled. He goes, that's a great question, because last year when I was here, they had put in a Six Sigma continuous improvement program to extend the life. Okay. So we get back into the office, and the typical end of the meeting question, from our team to the paper mill company was, are you having any problems? And the customer said, nope, all's good. I.e., the paper machines are good, all the vibration readings are good, everybody's happy. And I said, quick question. John just mentioned that you guys had a program on your pumps, these ANSI pumps, and I don't, 31, that got very specific into the type of pumps. And they said, yeah. These are approximate numbers because it's a long time ago. The customer said, yeah, we were getting on average a mean time between repair. Again, we won't get into a discussion of what repair versus failure versus, again, fine. Something like they were getting 30 months on average. They put a program in place and got it to 36 months. And he said, well, then we closed out the project. Six Sigma closed it out, whatever that's called. And I said, that's great. That's great. Well, good for you. 20% increase of life, 6 months over 30 months. Great for you. But the reason why I was asking is that I know that our company's done some work with one of the big oil and gas companies, and pumps are very important to them. And they're getting almost 14 years out of that same type of pump. And people look, they go, shut up. Really? A pump is a pump. A pump doesn't know what country, again, there are variations of temperature and the like, but a pump's a pump. It doesn't know where it is. It's just pumping something in general. And they were like, really? And I'm not saying you're going to go from 33 years to 14 years, but that's the best case scenario. Then I just got up on the board and said, you're spending $4,000 to replace these pumps, just buying the pump. The quick math was, if they could increase the life of their pumps halfway to where the best in the class was worth more than their total bearing spend within the whole facility. They went, no way. We thought, because they were low dollar value, they were not critical assets that didn't affect production, that it didn't matter. So I think the key takeaway learning there was one, it's called the reframe, but I only know what good is based on my own experience. So if I'm used to getting 30 months, now I get 36, that's good. Our job is to show them there's a better way and bring examples from other industries. Mm-hmm. And they specifically said to me, and this was before the Challenger existed, Todd, that's what we want our suppliers to do. Help us be better where we didn't know there was a chance to be better. Don't come in and tell me how to run a paper machine. I'm the biggest paper company in the world. I know what I'm doing. I want to know what I don't know. So that was one. And then two, putting the number there was like, holy crap. And then the final point, Don, which I think is a great closing technique for sales, is look at, you're here, best in class is here. I believe that if each pump lasted 6 weeks longer, which is a rounding error, it was going to pay for this big investment.
Right.
And they looked and they said, you want to know what? That makes me feel comfortable. The joke was, our people with your people staring at your pumps will make them last longer just by having a focus on it, right? Because there's a program. So it's our job to not play with the numbers, but to do the numbers and say, look, it's not a very risky situation. Best in class is here. It wouldn't be great if yes, we all know that would be great, but you're telling me a small improvement pays for all this? So whenever I do value quantification, I have this number in there, minimum improvement required. And that's usually where people go, wow, I only need to be 1% more effective that pays for all this. I need you to do it 1 day quicker than the other guy, and it pays for your price being worth that. These are not, it's a different way to present the numbers where people nod. And really
I love the concept of reframing the conversation around what value is really being created. But the customer just wants the cheapest price. So how do you teach salespeople to respond to that? Just give me the cheap rates.
Yep. I honestly respond. I say, do you mean the lowest price or the lowest cost? And I'm not joking. They say, well, that's what I meant. No, when you're looking at what I do, this is what price is, the $1,000 bearing, and this is what cost. Yeah. And then I've got, thank goodness, a ton of research, which again, over the years of you're looking at the wrong number. And then I've got to get you to rethink of it. Now, some of it is storytelling, and a great one that anybody can use. I think you said there might be some people from the UK on here, but we all have low priced airlines. in our market.
Absolutely.
Okay, pick the name. But I believe what we shouldn't be talking about safety. Everybody that's approved to fly is going to be safe.
Yeah, that's
So
table
then-
stakes.
Yeah, it's like in comfort, it's an hour flight from
Yeah.
here to there. Yeah, fine. Okay, so your value proposition isn't resonating with me, but it's the total cost and risk of where I am to where I'm going to be.
Yeah.
So real quickly, so this is but everybody can take the story and put it into their own world. Used to spend a fair amount of time in London, downtown, and then sometimes I would go to Paris afterwards. And I was with the Scottish guy, this procurement guy, and we finished our session downtown at LBS, and he'd say, "Well, you have time for a pint." And the Heathrow Express was basically right there at Paddington.
Yeah,
So,
I've been there.
Okay, it runs every 15 minutes to Heathrow. It takes 15 minutes. So if you miss the last train, the worst case scenario is taking you 30 minutes to get to Heathrow.
Right.
It's within a European flight, so 1 hour, plus I've got all the statuses. So, I knew 2 hours was the total worst case scenario I needed. So we'll say, okay, fine. The flight's at whatever, 4 o'clock. We've got time. Let's go. Fine. We can catch up, have a laugh, blah, blah, blah. And we finished one day, and my colleague had said to me the last time he was there, he goes, "Why don't you fly Ryanair, EasyJet, or one of these?" And I said, you want to know what? Good company person. Instead of it being $200 flight, it's $100 flight. So $100. I'll spend that money somewhere else. It's a $300. Why not? Okay, great. Finish the session, walk out. He goes, "What time's your flight?" And I pull out my phone and look at it and go, "I got to be at a London airport." And he goes, "Oh, crap. You've got to be at Gatwick."
Gatwick. Oh my goodness.
Oops. Okay, where's the fast train to Gatwick? Well, he started laughing.
Yeah.
This was a long time ago, and it's like, there is no fast train to Gatwick. Well, how do I get there? What time's your flight at? And well, the same thing. I have this 2.5 hours. He goes, "Oh God, we got to get you going now. We're gonna have to put you in a black cab." And back in the day, the cabs didn't take credit cards.
Yeah.
And so he had to pay £60 cash. It's in the book. So I still owe you that £60, I think. So he had to pay that. Then I get there. Then I get charged because I check in and have a bag, and I'm in Europe for 10 days.
Yeah.
Then we get on the plane. I'm thirsty. Can I get a Diet Coke? Whatever, a pound for that. Whatever. Just get me to Paris, right? Land. The pilot comes out, "Welcome to Paris." And I look outside. I'm going, "Geez."
And you're not at Charles de Gaulle.
Oh, I'm not Charles de Gaulle. And I had learned over time that Charles de Gaulle is great. You never want to fight Paris traffic during rush hour, but there's a high-speed train downstairs, which takes you into town. Once you're in town, you can take a cab or walk to the hotel that I used to stay at.
Right.
So I'm at Orly, the tourist airport, which at the time was take a bus, take a this. I'm like, or you could rent a car. No, I'm not renting a car to drive into town to park it at a hotel for 3 days. Imagine that cost. So again, in this case, I had to take a Euro cab.
Yeah.
The total cost was 3 times the price taking the low price carrier.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't just the check baggage. It's like, hey,
three times the total price, total cost compared to the cheap price.
Exactly. And if you were to put that on a website like this, and this, I think it might not resonate, but get that story out. What a great commercial.
Yeah.
It makes you think. It makes you stop and think and go, wow.
Well, and I think that's, when you focus on the price of the unit, that's the potential that can happen. And so I really want to have this in balance. So, we've talked a lot about what companies and salespeople need to be doing to quantify the value and communicate that in storytelling. I think is important. What can the buying organization do to capture that same value and understand, should they be, engaging with suppliers in a different way? Should they be teaching their people a different way of figuring out how to quantify what matters? Like, what's the special sauce for that oil company that is faced with trying to lower their costs?
A bunch of things. The first change is for the strategic direction to say, I want my supply chain to buy best value. Okay. Right. When I say best value, I don't mean lowest price. Price is part of that, but to say, as a company, I want to be more profitable. I want to be more sustainably profitable, because any company can be more profitable next month by cutting out maintenance, as an example. But we all know that's a big expense in the future. So it's okay. And setting my KPIs around that. So one funny thing I just tell procurement people is I say, every time you send out a proposal, specifically say, please describe and document how you will make me more profitable. In the bid process, it will be weighted the following. So one of the white papers that I've been involved with says, look at the bid will be based on, the winner of the bid will be based on best value. We measure value by looking at all these costs and benefits, and this is the weighting system we use.
Yeah.
The problem we have is salespeople think procurement doesn't care about value. So
Correct.
maybe we don't do the work or we don't bother to quantify it because, all they care about is price. And they don't do a good job of saying, what I want is that, and here's how I'm going to measure it. If I was a procurement organization, I would have a system, tool, and process that says, here's what I value. Energy saving. Again, to some companies, energy savings might be 0.0001%. To other, it's a huge percent. So I would also say, here's how I quantify it.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting thing. I learned a long time ago, in these sorts of situations, to actually intentionally ask, how are you measuring and evaluating this proposal, this request, and what's your weighting system? And they get nervous even wanting to share that. And like, how are you going to get value if you don't communicate how you are measuring value?
Yep. But I think that's one of those things to ask. So similar question, a procurement person said, I don't want to tell people what numbers I use and what I value, because once they realize they're delivering a lot of value to me, they're going to try to charge me for it. So there's two things there. My procurement gentleman that I mentioned, Rob McGuire from the book, he goes, Todd, you don't understand. I teach procurement people, and I used to do it myself. It's called the Strategy of Stupidity. If I play dumb, you will give me a lot of value and not charge me for it. The second I tell you it's worth something, you're going to say, see, I proved it. So be careful. That's what I'm doing, like subconsciously. And you're going to continue to do these things. And I said, okay, here's the problem. If you don't tell me you care about energy, or you tell me that energy is not a big deal, for example, my smart person, not me, my smart person is going to walk to your facility and go, my God, look how they're doing that now. I can help them fix that. But you told me not to do it. By you not telling me what you care about, you're not going to get the value.
Right.
And there's a lot of research, again, that says people that buy this way. So I spend a lot of time helping sales teams saying, we're not there to tell procurement how to buy. What I'm trying to do is give them the power, the knowledge, and the comfort that this is the right thing to do.
Right. To make good informed decisions.
Yeah. These third-party research points saying, hey, we need to buy this way.
Right.
And then again, if somebody doesn't tell you, throw it a challenge. So if I could save you or make you $100,000 more profitable by changing the way we do this, that wouldn't be of any interest to you. And see what the react. Well, wait a minute. Wait, how you could do that? I didn't know you could do that. How? Okay, now we have a different discussion, but we've got to be a little more provocative. I'm not saying being arrogant, and I'm not saying just throwing out bold numbers all the time, but I've looked at facilities like this, and I think there's probably a $500,000 improvement of how we could do this.
Yeah.
Let's sit together and I can show you what we do and how we do it. But get my attention by throwing that number out there.
Yeah. Todd, where do people get your book?
Amazon or any other place you get online. I mean, and Don, a review is always appreciated. So
I'll make sure I go on there after this recording and give you a great review, because I actually bought your book a couple of months ago when we first met. Value first, then price, and I've been talking about it with my team ever since I got it, and ever since we talked, because I just think that you have found yourself a niche, and you found yourself a niche where you can be the whisperer for both procurement and sellers. And I think that that's a really great place, because I think it creates a bridge that those two organizations don't need to be rivals.
Right. And I think that's one thing, just to always sit there and put yourself in the other person's situation.
Yeah.
Stop and think, what are they thinking? Because I think you have a different conversation that way and say, you know what? Again, I've been lucky to spend time with all these procurement associations around the world and, hopefully help them rethink. But they're saying to me specifically, they want value.
Yeah.
They might not
But
say the word
but
value.
they need help quantifying it
Yep,
so
yep.
that they can make better decisions.
And to help quantify it, finding it too. Like I said, if the pumps are always lasting that long, I didn't know that was an improvement.
Right.
Right. I mean, companies that do this are more profitable, and it's our job to go out there and shake the
I
tree.
found it really interesting that when buying organizations focus on value, they're 35.5% more profitable. And when selling organizations focus on value, they're 36% more profitable. That's not a coincidence.
It's amazing. But
It's
just think,
really, really intriguing.
just think as a company, by changing the way you buy, I mean, what a huge impact.
Mhm.
Wow. In a lot of industries, every point's everything, So let's stop fighting each other over a 5% price difference and say, fine, but you better deliver me value that exceeds that because I want a return for that investment.
Yeah.
And it better be real value, not just because you're fun to go out for dinner with when you're in town. Yeah. I prefer to work with somebody that I like, but I can't pay for that.
Yeah.
Bring me something tangible.
How do people work with you, Todd? Like, what ways do you work with companies?
Gambits from long-term consulting, project specifics, and from keynotes, sales conferences, ongoing coaching. I have some clients that I've worked with now that I'm kind of their, we joke, sales coach on demand. Like, hey, here's our situation. What do you think? How can we rethink this? Do you have any research? Do you have that? So, the website that the Experts in Value website's got a lot of, I think, great videos on there. There's probably 10 of them. Some of them are me just standing on stage talking. A lot of white papers, a chapter from the book, but a bunch of other white papers and the like. And it gets more specifically on, how do you price for value? How do you build a services business? How do you contract for this? How do you communicate value? And then, of course, how do you quantify it? That's where it all starts. Really getting an understanding of what value do I offer? How can I measure that? Who does that impact on my customers? And what are some reasonable places to start? And what tools could I have to, make this systematic? So it's not an Excel spreadsheet or the back of a piece of paper, but there's tools and systems that exist. Some companies choose to build their own. I suggest that there's 3 or 4 great suppliers out there that have a software. Again, the software is just the software. You've got to put the data in the software to make it a value. But and that's how I'm available to help companies become more profitable and take that value they create and really get better at getting paid for it.
Fantastic. www.expertsinvalue.com. Todd Snelgrove. Todd, thanks for coming on the show. This was fantastic.
Don, great seeing you again, and all the best. And maybe we'll do a follow-up in 6 months or a year and tell more stories because
absolutely. I love the stories that you tell because the value that gets uncovered is often not obvious when you're just looking at unit rates, is it?
Yes. And we all could say, sell value, but how, when, why? Give me some stories that I can use and I can resonate with.
Put some meat on the bone, as it were.
You got it.
Thanks, Todd.
Cheers, Don. All the best.
And there you have it. Thank you everybody so much for listening to this episode of the Amplifier Podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with or learn more about Don or Todd and what they both do, then you can do so anytime through their links in the episode description. Make sure you leave the show a 5-star rating. It truly does help us out a lot. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss any future episodes. But with all that said, I thank you so much for listening again, and we can't wait to see you next time on the Amplifier Podcast.